Peace be unto you. And so when you hear that in the Middle East, you should say Aleichem Shalom back, because that means and unto you peace. So let's try it again. Shalom Aleichem. Okay, did you have trouble with the ch sound? You know, that's how we tell who's Jewish. Because, you know, the other thing, you know, only boys, you can only tell who boys are Jewish, you know, but that's a lot of states do that now, so can't really tell. So we have to do the ch sound. So when you go home, you know, it's like getting popcorn stuck in your throat. And you go home and stand in front of your mirror, and if you got water on the mirror when you're doing it, then you're doing it right, and you might have some Jewish blood in you. And if you don't, if people are doing this, then you got it. I am Rabbi Nate Seitelbach, and I am a Messianic believer. I'm Jewish by birth. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and I went to a synagogue, and I got bar mitzvahed at the age of 13, and I left my faith because I was living in an Irish-Italian neighborhood, and I got stuck in high school with all these other people, and I wandered a spiritual desert for 40 years, just like Moses, and I got saved in 1988 in a church, and I found out that you could be Jewish and still believe in Jesus, because Jesus is Jewish. In fact, his name is Yeshua, and I found out that every Jewish name has a meaning. Yeshua means salvation, and so he has to spend his whole life living up to the meaning of his name, and I have to spend my whole life living up to the meaning of my name, and I found out my name in Hebrew is Natan, or Nathan, and it means gift. So I'm going to try and be a gift to you today. Okay, that's what I do. Dr. Linda mentioned something about Easter being a month ago. Normally, Passover and Easter coincide with each other because Easter celebrates the resurrection, and this month they're separated this year. And I want to tell you why, because, you know, when you have every 4 years on our calendar, our Gregorian calendar, we have a leap day, right, that we add in February. Well, the Jews don't do things in a small way. We add an extra month 7 times in every 19-year cycle. And so this year is a leap year on the Jewish calendar, so we've added a 13th month, and so that's why they're separated, okay? But Passover actually begins on the 14th day of Nisan. And if you look in Exodus chapter 12, verse 2, God says, this is the beginning of the year for you. So God's calendar is different than the calendars that we know. We know we have a Gregorian calendar that starts in January, and y'all wake up at midnight and go, whoopee, Happy New Year. And then there's a government New Year's, right, that starts in July or somewhere, and then the Chinese have one, and the Jewish people even have a calendar that starts in September. But God's calendar, and the one I like to follow, is the one that starts in Exodus in the spring. And that's a good time to start a new year, in spring. God's days also begin at sundown, the night before. They don't begin at midnight, like we are used to thinking. I mean, do you guys go to sleep and set your alarms for midnight and wake up and go, Happy New Day? No. Well, it's a lot nicer to start at 6 p.m., right, after you've had dinner, and beautiful, happy new day. You know, so I like God's way of doing things better. And so he started in there, and he also gave us some days that we want to remember. So in Exodus chapter 6, he said that he was going to do 4 things for the Jewish people. They were in slavery. He said, I'm going to save you. I'm going to take you out, I'm going to redeem you, and I'm going to I'm going to be your God, and you're going to be my people. And so the Exodus began with that, and he told everybody they had to get a lamb. They had to keep it in their house for 4 days and 4 nights and examine it to make sure it had no defects. So it had to be a perfect, spotless lamb. You imagine the children in the house playing with this lamb for 4 days and 4 nights, and then Dad has to go kill it. Poor Fluffy. I mean, you know, and then they had to eat it. And when they were eating it, they had to take the blood. How much blood is in a lamb? Anybody know? I was trying to look it up this morning. I found 60 milliliters. I don't know what that converts to, but 1.26 pints or something. I don't know. There's a lot of blood in a lamb, not as much as a human. But they had to take this blood and get some hyssop and put it on the doorpost and lintel of their house. And so that protected them because God was going to go do the 10th plague, right? And y'all know what the 10th plague is. How many of you are firstborn sons? Wow, thank you, ancestors. At least for me. I don't know if you could do the chus sound, you better thank your ancestors. Yeah, he saved me. And so while they had to eat this Passover, they had to eat it in a hurry, and they had to eat the whole lamb. And I looked that up, and a lamb is got about 40 to 50 pounds of meat. Yeah, and they said you could have 10 people over, so that's still 4 to 5 pounds of meat that you had to eat that night if you were celebrating God's Passover. So I suppose you let up on the potatoes a little bit and the dessert, huh? But while they were doing that, God passed over, killed the firstborn, and in the morning, they could come out and become God's chosen people. They could leave Egypt, And so they emerged out of a doorpost and a lintel. Just take a picture of that. Looks like a womb almost, with a baby being born. They are now born again people. I mean, these people were supposed to die, but because they had faith, they were saved. And so God took them out. They were born again people, and he says, all right, let's get going. You don't have time to go down to the Wonder Bread store. You'll have to bake your bread in 18 minutes flat. And that's called matzah, unleavened bread. And we know that leaven in 1 Corinthians talks about sin, right? And so we know that they're trying to keep the sin. God is trying to keep their sin out of them for 7 days because it takes 7 days to get to the Red Sea. And so when he marches them sinless to the Red Sea in 7 days, and he gets to the Red Sea, and what does he do there? He says, and they're worried because these Egyptians are coming down on them, and he said just in Exodus 14:13, stand by and see the deliverance of the Lord. See the salvation of the Lord. The word for salvation in the Bible is Yeshua. So stand by and see Yeshua. He's going to take care of you. And so God splits the Red Sea, and they walk through it. Guess what that is? You call it baptism. I call it a mikvah in Hebrew. Jewish people do that all the time. They go to the mikvah. There's a ritual mikvah at the Jewish Community Center, and women do it every month after their monthly cycle. And they're born again when they come out of the water. That's the concept. Jewish men do it every week on Friday, so they get ready for the Sabbath, and they're born again. It's a whole new process, and I know these things sound familiar to you in a church setting, but I see it as a Jew. It's a lot different. And so then he takes them to Mount Sinai, and what does he do? He gives them the wedding contract. We call it the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, and he says, these are the things you have to do, or you should do, if you want to be my people. And he says, you're to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation in Exodus 19:6. You're to go out into the world and teach the whole world about this stuff. And you're to keep this Passover forever. So now we have this Passover Seder that we have every year. And it's tomorrow night starts. But actually, Passover starts tonight at sundown. It's the 14th day of Nisan at sundown tonight and through tomorrow. But the Jewish people are very confused. They don't know when to celebrate anything. But the Feast of Unleavened Bread, if you look at Leviticus 23, is a Sabbath day. And so they figured that's a good time to have a Passover Seder. So they started the tradition of doing it then. In the first century, there were 2 Passover Seders, one that Jesus attended. We call it the Last Supper. And that was done on the 14th day. That would have been tonight in our reckoning. And then the Pharisees, the other group of Jews, did it on the 15th night of the night. And so Jesus was relating to the Essenes You know that because in the book of Luke or Mark, I forget which, there's a man that's carrying a pitcher of water. And they said, where do we have this Passover? And the disciples tell him, and he says, go find a guy with a pitcher of water. Well, you know, men don't carry water in the first century. Women do. That's women's work. But the Essenes lived at the Dead Sea, and they wouldn't have any women there. They kind of died off. Wonder why. But so the men had to do the women's work. So that's how we knew that it was an Essene Passover Seder that they were having. And so Jesus celebrated the Last Supper. He went out and died, and he died as our Passover lamb. He was nailed to the cross while all the other Jews were carrying their lambs to the temple. And they were singing the Psalms 113 through 118, which we sing at the Passover Seder every year. And when they would sing this, the priests, there was 24,000 priests on duty that day to help all these people kill their lambs so they could have their dinner for Passover night on the night of the 15th, tomorrow night. And so while they're doing that, they're singing the verses of the Psalms, and the crowd is shouting, hallelujah! And Jesus is dying on the cross, just like the lambs. You know how they cook a lamb in the old days? They used to split it straight down, bang its head onto a stick, and spread its arms out like this. Does that remind you of anything? Their lambs were cooking while Jesus was dying, and he looked just like their lambs. He was our Passover lamb. He was our blood atonement. God requires the blood atonement. That's why they did that back in Egypt, put the blood on the doorposts and lintels. And so the Passover Seder that we have now is built upon tradition over the last 4,000 years, 3,500 years, and 2,000 years, because Jesus created some tradition himself. In the year 70 AD, the temple was destroyed, and you couldn't kill lambs anymore. So you couldn't have any Passover lambs. So today, Jews do not eat lamb at Passover, but they have a shank bone of a lamb on what they call the Seder plate to show the lamb. But Jesus instituted another process. He said, take a piece of matzah, and we had 3 in a bag, and he broke the middle one, and they would wrap it in a white cloth, and we would hide it, and after the meal, we would have the children go search for it. It's a game, and they would get a prize if they found it. And then we would eat that with the third cup, the cup of redemption, from Exodus chapter 6. I will take you, I will deliver you, I will redeem you. And we ate the piece of matzah, the afikomen. It's the only Greek word in the whole Passover Seder. Afikomen means that which is hidden. So we would break the matzah, wrap it in a white cloth, bury it, and what? Resurrect it. Does that look like Jesus to you? It does to me. The Jewish people, they don't see that. They think it represents Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But why would you break Isaac in half? Doesn't make any sense. They don't understand, but they do it, and they drink the cup of redemption. We call it communion. They call it something, the third cup. You know, and then Jesus did something else. So he substituted that afikomen for the lamb. And then he said, I'm not going to drink the fourth cup until we get back together. And then there is a fourth cup where God says, I will take you as my people. And so we do that every year to celebrate the fact that we are God's people, that we've been accepted in his kingdom, and we're awaiting our bridegroom to come back. You ever go to a wedding? A wedding service is the exact same thing I just described to you. The departure from Egypt all the way through the receiving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. That's what a wedding is. It's a beautiful picture of God's marriage to Israel. And Israel is his chosen people, and he's never given up on Israel. I might have a couple of minutes for questions.
Yes, you do.
Does anybody have a question? Or I can keep talking, tell you jokes. My congregation meets in West Omaha we're called the Adat HaTikvat Zion, the Hope of Zion congregation. We have a website, adat.org, so I say adat.org. Adat means congregation. you can look us up and you can see our services. We live stream all of our services. We're even shown in the American Embassy every week in Nairobi, Kenya. They watch us. Yeah, and Sweden and Finland and Australia, everywhere. They watch us everywhere. So I'm a YouTube star. If you want my autograph, come and get it. And I have a bunch of my teachings are on the website there. They're all free. I have a beautiful 12-week course called God's Plan. I love coming out here. Last time I was here, I got a bunch of people who graduated and became pastors, and they invited me to their churches. So if you ever become a pastor, I'll be very happy to come and speak at your church. Also, we have a lot of students that come here to our congregation because I guess you guys get a class assignment that you have to go visit odd churches and write about them. Well, we are about as odd as you get because we worship the way they did in the first century, and it's a lot different. And there was one girl, she wrote a paper, and she said, I don't know what they were doing. They spoke a funny language, Hebrew, and but it was way out of my box. But I know that they loved Jesus, so it must have been okay. That was her paper. I don't know who graded that, but how are we doing for time? I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
You said you were saved in '88. How long have you been a rabbi?
I was ordained about 1996 or so. No, actually 98, sorry. Yeah, I was ordained in 98. I went through a process.
What is that process?
Well, normally rabbis would go to a school, they called it a yeshiva, and just like you're here at Grace University, it'd be similar to that, and they have them in New York for the Jewish ones, but the Messianic movement has its own credentialing groups. We have our own universities, mostly online, and so that's how I did it. Yes, sir?
Are all the people in your congregation Jews?
No, the majority of the people there are Gentile. They come from various church backgrounds. They said that they really don't believe the churches that they're in, and they wanted to come and be part of Israel. God says we're to come together in the last days. And I'm going to be talking in the Romans class here in a few minutes about that same subject, I guess. Yeah. But you all, Jews and Gentiles, are to be one in Messiah. As a Messianic, I am an outcast from the Jewish world. They don't consider me Jewish. They consider me sold out to the Christians. I've converted. Although I'm born Jewish and God made me Jewish, I don't think anybody could change that. I don't believe in conversions of any kind. I believe God makes you what you are. And then the churches kind of are very lukewarm. I used to be able to teach in them, and now they don't really want me there because I guess I took some of their people away. I don't know. There's a whole different philosophy, and we don't have time to get into it all here. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I was hoping you could expound upon, you said Exodus to Mount Sinai, or leaving Egypt to Mount Sinai is representative of the marriage covenant.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Well, and the Jewish wedding is, we go through God decided to wed Israel, so he needed to begin a separation process. So he took them out of Egypt. He kept them holy for 7 days. He baptized them. He took them to the Mount Sinai, where he gave them the Torah. He gave them a gift called the Sabbath. That's like a ring that you would receive at a wedding ceremony. When I do a wedding ceremonies, I usually explain that stuff, and it's a very involved process, but all of the things that are pictured in Exodus point to the wedding ceremony, and I can show you all that. Sorry, we don't have time to do it here. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I don't know.
I'll tell you what, I will buy you lunch.
Wow. I was wondering, you don't have ham, do you? Is it ham sandwiches?
I'm sure we can find something.
I'm just joking. Paul says we're to have fellowship with whoever. Yeah, I'll be there, I guess. Yes, sir.
So do you observe like the dietary restrictions?
I do. It's a personal thing. You know, I decided that if I'm going to follow God's Torah, I'm going to do it. You know, and I don't do everything that God says. There's like 613 rules. But you know, in the New Testament, there's 1,050 rules that you're supposed to do. That's a lot more than I have to do. How many of those do you do? Not to put you on the spot. I decided that I used to eat pork as a Jew. Growing up in Brooklyn, my family fed me pork and ham and, shrimp. I loved it, and I still do. I used to go to clam bars, suck down clams. I decided one day I didn't want to do it anymore because it says in his book not to do it. It's my choice, and I don't fault anybody for doing it. Everybody is on their own road traveling. You have your journey. When you stand before God, I ain't going to be there. Your lawyer won't be present. It's just going to be you.
Can you kind of explain to us what is keeping the Jews back?
2,000 years of persecution in his name. They don't know much about Jesus himself, just what's been done to them in his name by the church. The Crusades to start off with, lots of persecutions, pogroms in different various cities. Jews, even the Holocaust. Hitler was never excommunicated from the Catholic Church, It's very sad. I lost 33 family members in the Holocaust, and I've been tracing my roots. And I'm going back to Poland this summer to visit my hometown there, where my family came from. It's going to be exciting. I hope find my roots. I have family in Israel, too, that live there. I visited them. I'm going to Israel May 31st. It'll be my 5th trip. I have a tour going. I have 20 people going on the tour. So, I love it. Yes, ma'am. Messianic Jews are scattered all over. A lot of them attend churches, and they don't want to do anything Jewish, or they hide their Jewish identity. There's a lot that do their Jewish stuff at home. I believe that as a Messianic believer, I am just like Rabbi Paul. You call him the Apostle Paul. To me, he's a rabbi, and I do what he does. Go around telling Gentiles what they should be doing. Really, it's the truth. You do have a charter. And I don't know, how are we doing for time? I will say we're having our Passover Seder this week at the Hilton Hotel down the street. We have it every year at the Hilton. We have 290 people coming from different church backgrounds and everywhere, all over town. And it's an exciting event we have every year. It's an outreach, and we're just excited to do it. So we teach the Passover. We go to it in depth. Yes, ma'am. Sir, I'm sorry. Well, I thought it was her hand, but I guess it's yours. You're the freshman guy, right?
What?
You're the guy that's having the freshman party.
I am, yeah, that would be.
All right. I can't wait to come.
Like you said, obviously you don't believe in any kind of conversion, and I don't either. But for like Gentiles who join your services and join your church,
They're grafted in.
yeah, and like what would you say is like for them, like what is the attraction for that? Like what is their reason for wanting to join a Jewish congregation?
They believe in the God of Israel, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They believe the way we do and the way we follow and do things. We do them very biblically. A lot of these people study the Bible very hard. They're deep Bible readers. And they don't see where they're getting that in their churches that they were attending. Yeah. We have lots of deep Bible study where I am. Okay, so
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.